Welcome to Today in EVE Online. It is November 22nd, 2019. I am Matari. Come with some news. First of all, let's do a little bit of review of yesterday, and then we'll go on to today's news. But yesterday, if you didn't catch the show, we had something erupt near the middle of the show that had been kind of brewing for a few days, and that was one of the leaders of, I guess it's fair to call him one of the leaders. He says he's not one of the leaders, but I think it's fair to say that. Uh, Valentes, what's the name? Oh, it's slipping. Anyway, somebody from Bomber's Bar joined a corporation that looked to be hinting at white supremacy, and then a lot of their stuff was erased. And so this Reddit thread came out that, let's see if I can find it, that this guy had inadvertently joined white supremacist group. And the reason you do something like that is to bring attention to the group, not necessarily the guy that joined the group, but it does paint Bomber's Bar in a bad light because now they're associated in some way. And if people don't really research, they may be confused and think that Bomber's Bar is white supremacists, and that's just not the case. So it was kind of after the show, we had an hour-long discussion about that sort of thing, and there was some tension in it because it's a very passionate issue. Hi, Caleb. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. It was a little bit more than an hour, but yeah.
Was it like it was like 2 hours? I don't know. I left after about an hour. Somebody else came in.
It continued for a while. It was a really hot topic.
It was, right?
Yeah, it's also kind of controversial because of the connotations of what kind of group can you affiliate with and how much due diligence do you actually have to do. I hope that the CCP burns them to the ground because I think they will be very offended at the cultural appropriation.
Because it's Icelandic culture being appropriated, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think they would be a bit angry about that.
I think they would. Let's see. How are our sound levels, by the way? Are we sounding about equal? Let me know in chat. Last time I thought I was being too quiet, and I ended up on recording being too loud. I think OBS has terrible sound. Visually, you can't tell if you're too loud or just right. So it's got shortcomings. It's a free software without advertising. So what do you expect? Okay, Caleb. Going back to that issue, I think it had so many angles to it. One is, how well do you vet groups that you're joining? How much does that say about you if you're joining them, that you're new to the group? The other thing is, how much of, I don't know, how much cultural appropriation do you do of other people's culture, but also of your own? Let's say, how much do you, how much are you allowed to appreciate your own culture? And then at what point do you turn into my culture first kind of a group? And I think that would be like, I think those are interesting, all interesting things. But the reason we picked it up is because it was a meta play, and I thought that was interesting. You use a celebrity like Valentes, I think that's his name, who is associated with Bomber's Bar and has a good rep, and he's a fun guy and all that stuff. And so when he does something, people look to see what he's up to. I mean, the reason he joined the group in the first place was to have this kind of a gag where he doesn't join any group, but all of a sudden when he does join a group, it's the smallest little backwater mining group you can imagine. And the problem is he just kind of joined the wrong one. Although they were paying him, so there's that. But I don't imagine there's any amount that would cover the cost of a reputation you built up over time. So if we can finish that, we will. But as it is now, there's a lot of evidence that came out after the fact that we were looking at, and it just looks pretty clear.
But it did take a lot of work, right? It was fairly decently hidden, right? It was not like overtly in your face. So the mistake was understandable, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Okay, So if you wanted to hear what happened there, go back to the last episode on the 21st. I think it's called The Wayback Machine Strikes. And what we meant there was that the going back on the Wayback Machine for the internet allows you to see posts before they were edited or destroyed. And that's where you found a bunch of evidence to prove these guys were, or leaning towards white supremacy attitudes. And so that was what proved stuff. Okay, go back to the last episode for that sort of thing. Fleet Academy, yes, we will talk about Fleet Academy. I want to talk about it every day. Things are slow right now. We have software that's actually being constructed right now. It should be done in a week or two. Well, that's without any padding, so we'll see. But it's going to have a very minimal delivery of sign up for classes, show up to classes, that kind of thing. The full curriculum is going to be built over time, but probably by January we should be in full swing. That is the goal. Things do go slow because you're working with multiple people all over the world. But I am really impressed the amount of people that have said, we want to help. How do I become a part of this? How do I sign up for classes? And I just had someone today before the show say that he was very interested in the classes. He'd been playing the game for a number of years, but he'd never actually shot at anyone. So he's a little bit nervous. And that's exactly what we want to provide, is a place for players to put their foot in the water. Realize PvP is fun, even when you don't win. And the Academy, the TIS Fleet Academy, will be a place that you can learn that sort of lesson in a guided way without all the trappings of humiliation or any of that kind of stuff. And, we will insulate a person to be able to overcome whatever fears they have of starting to PvP. And the thing is, this is combat PvP because player versus player is all over EVE Online. If you have evaded someone, you have participated in PvP. So it's just a way of getting people into the spirit of things that might open doors for them to do things, or at least have confidence when they're alone that they can defend themselves, or however it goes. And maybe we end up doing more than that. Sort Dragon was on last Wednesday's show, which was actually just published, so check that out. He and Pando were guests with Ron and Silver Suspiria on the midweek show. And afterwards, they came around and talked for a little while, and I popped in after that. And we started talking about, I said, Sort, I want to do a class on diplomacy. You're interested in teaching it? And I thought I was trying to be funny. But the classes, the point that I'm making is, in reality, take Sort aside, but in reality, we do want to start with PvP classes and get people brawling. Try to play the game like it's a Counter-Strike game with more people involved, tactical, efficient. That is a lot of fun when you feel like you're part of a team doing a thing. But we're going to focus on PvP first. And then over time, we might have classes like a diplomacy class or a CEO class, how you run a corporation, and certainly financial classes. I mean, we want to make it full breadth of bringing you into situations. So that's what the Academy is going to be about. We're looking forward to building that. All right. I want to say... Okay, good. So Mecha Paladin, he says, I've been waiting for something like this. I've been playing for a long time. I have no idea what I'm doing. Funny thing is, a lot of people don't know what they're doing. So, yeah. Hey, Amon, how's it going? A lot of people don't know how to play EVE Online. They suspect that everybody around them is super efficient and good. And that's just not the case. Most people are led around by the nose. I would say a good, I don't know, Caleb, how many people don't know how to play this game that are in fleets?
95%.
Yeah, and I wouldn't contest that. What tends to happen in EVE is that people will join groups and have the group provide them with the opportunity to participate. So the group decides how you participate, and they kind of set the guidelines for that. Sometimes they give you the equipment, or they replace your equipment if you lose it. And but they tell you what to do. You can do other stuff too, but they're going to tell you what to do. And that's just about the majority of EVE players are being told what to do. So the real gravy for a lot of people is being the guys in charge, and they don't want to lose that. So that's where you get like the amount of work it takes, which is a lot, to organize a group and keep them together, because it feels pretty good to be in charge. And I think that's what happens on different scales in EVE Online. So if you're one guy that knows a little bit and you have a corporation that works in a certain area that you're pretty sure about, you tell your guys what to do and how to do it, and you provide them with the entryways into content, which is basically playtime, right? Content is what you do. But it scales, right? So you get bigger, you form an alliance, you become the executor of an alliance, and then your corporation's the lead corporation, carrying a lot of the weight and providing opportunities for content for these other groups that don't have the FC or don't have the experience to do it themselves. Again, those corporations are following a few corporations in an alliance, and then an alliance will lead a coalition, and that coalition has alliances that have participated and are efficient, just not on the same scale as the big alliances. So that's what those coalitions are. And the point is, people in EVE Online are kind of led, and so people who want to be leaders, it's a great place to pick up followers and practice your leadership and stuff. Thanks, Amon. I appreciate the subscription. I want to say, if you want to help out, I just wrote what was on my mind there. I didn't actually write the right things. That is funny. I just wrote the guy's name and then subscription. I didn't write thanks, which is what I meant. Well, the point is, I'll get back to the point that I was making before, which is, if you feel like you don't know this game, you're not alone. A lot of people don't know. The Academy will give you, as an individual, some knowledge so that you can feel confident about playing the game in a way that you want to. It's not about following us. It's about us telling you some of the things that you're going to need to be expected to do when you're part of a fleet. Or if you want to learn how to FC, we're going to teach those classes too. If you want to scout, we'll teach that too. But the main thing is to get you over your fears, because people have a lot of fears. Morning, Lich Grave. How you doing?
Hey. Doing great.
Yeah, so Fleet Academy from Talking in Stations, look for it. It's coming soon. We actually have a fleet this Sunday. We'll have one next month as well. This Monday will be next month. And then we'll have a second fleet before Christmas. These are not our fleets. Right now we're borrowing Redemption Road, which is Grey Gal's group. And they have always done this, so it's not our thing, but she is the one running our program. So we will move people to her program to do these first fleets for new bros. They're kind of purple fleets for new bros and public roams. And then a little bit later, we'll have the more formal classes and seminars that teach you a thing or two that is very specific. But for now, if you want to get involved, that's a good way to do it. More information on that on Discord. We'll be also putting up a section for our website. Okay, I've made it full 15 minutes without talking about news, so we should probably do that next.
And on the Grey Gal thing, she's also taking part in reworking the new Vegas thing.
Well, she is taking part, but she is involved. She's not in charge. Okay, and the Twitter, and this is important, the Twitter account was created by an eVegas 2020 group. The reason people want to know is they want to know if this is going to be a Goon Swarm event. And it is, basically, or was a Goon Swarm event that was taken over by CCP for a number of years, and CCP is now no longer sponsoring it. So it's now a player event. The question is, who's player, what players, what are they celebrating, etc. And I think Goon Swarm, or at least from what I've heard, is they want everybody to show up that showed up for eVegas's prior. Of course they do, because it's open for everybody, etc., etc. and that may be the case. There is something that you can look at. I think it's in our news channel on Discord, and it is some kind of a a survey to see if like it has stuff that you're interested in. I myself will never go to Vegas again. But you shouldn't not go to Vegas because I'm not going. You should do whatever you want. But I'm looking forward to EVE San Diego, and that's where I'll be spending my time. I think it's a much cleaner environment and will be a much better celebration of EVE Online than Vegas was, in my opinion. Vegas is a celebration of the players getting super trashed and going out and getting super trashed, and it's just not what I want to do anymore. I didn't get trashed to begin with, but it's just not what I want to do. But check that out. Oh, questions from Nick Bison. I'm curious how they plan to run the fleets. I don't plan to be someone's F1 monkey. Back to Fleet Academy. The Fleet Academy is, again, it's... being an F1 monkey, basically F1 is your shoot button. So it's what happens in fleets, for those that are brand new to the game, is that you are told to circle your lead pilot, your FC, your fleet commander. And when you circle him, wherever he moves, you move too. Therefore, you don't need to move anymore. You're just circling you're orbiting your pilot and shooting with the F1 key if you're using your hotkeys. And that is why a lot of fleet members are called F1 monkeys, because all they have to do is push that button like a monkey. And that is not what the classes are designed to do. So no way that Fleet Academy is going to be just going around and shooting things for somebody else's enjoyment. It's going to be and focus on teaching people how to maneuver, how to survive, evasive action, a lot of the concepts of range, these kinds of things that you need to practice. And you can practice them with your friends in a real life situation, or you can practice with the guidance of people who've done it for a number of years and are very good at it. It's up to you. The Fleet Academy at this point is going to be free. And it's going to be very structured. That's the one thing. It's going to be structured. You're going to lose your own stuff. You're going to risk your own stuff. But we will give you guidance, and we'll make sure that you have what you need. We'll fill in the blanks, basically. Yep. So there's the clarification for Fleet Academy. Thank you for asking that, Nick. More information to come. I have not broadcasted out publicly yet. I've only talked about it on these airwaves. Okay, so do you have any news on the eVegas thing, Caleb? Anything you want to say?
Well, it's just that they put up the article about the fact that they're spinning it up and they're creating the group for planning, and Grey Gal is supporting it.
Well, they're using Grey Gal's name.
There is now.
They're using Grey Gal's name an awful lot because she didn't necessarily volunteer to do it. They kind of put her out there in front because she's a name that everybody could like and trust. And I get that, but from what I understand, it wasn't like she's like, yeah, let's do this again. It's more like, if you guys need the help, I'll help. But so that's why I feel like it's a little bit deceptive. But that's neither here nor there. She is part of that effort. She just may not lead it this time. And the reason it's a big name, Grey Gal is the one that organized the volunteer effort, as you saw from the Vegas stage, for eVegas in the last few years. And she's quite a lovely person that puts in a ton of effort, and you can count on her. So that's why she's being put out there in front. It's not necessarily Goonswarm saying like, hey, come to our meet, because they're only going to get Goonswarm members. But, whatever. Like I said, go if you want to. There's a survey. Take that survey if you want to. Sorry, I cut you off, Caleb. That was really rude.
No, it's fine. It's just the whole thing of taking it back to be a player-run event is a bit of a big assignment, right? It's going to take a while to get everything in place and get all the people assembled that can actually take part in it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why they asked Grey Gal to help out with spinning up some of her experience with all the planning, so they can pretty much take it over. I don't think they're going to assume that she's going to be doing all the work, because she's already overworked when it comes to the volunteering group, right?
Well, it's not that they're putting her name out front. Like everywhere I see it, it's like, hey, it's almost like Grey Gal's E Vegas 2020 instead of like, hey, this is the Imperium's E Vegas 2020. Like they're hiding behind her reputation. That kind of irks me, because it's not. I feel like it's a little deceptive. I think if you're gonna play the game and burn people during the game and then expect them to come party with you, then own that. Don't stick people in front to like say, yeah, come to our party. Now I don't know if it's just Imperium. Like I said, they want other people to go too, but that's how it appears to me.
No, it's going to be full all Eve players, but it's going to be planned by the Imperium with collaboration from people that are willing to actually take part in collaboration.
Well, whatever. I said here's why I'm upset about it. I see it as I don't see it as additive. I see it as competitive. I see it as like, oh no, CCP is not having it in Vegas. Well, we'll have it in Vegas because that's our party. So we're going to have it in Vegas. And so there's a big effort to publicize it and to get people there. But if people have only one opportunity to go to a Vegas event, an Eve event, which one do they choose? And I feel like it's being confused on purpose. They use the same logo as Eve Vegas. Maybe that was a logo before, so I can't say that's CCP's logo. And it looks generic, so I don't know. But it's Eve Vegas 2020. To me, there's no indication that it's not CCP's. It's not being sponsored. So I think they should be very clear that CCP is, these are the devs that are going to be there, that kind of stuff, because it's not a fully supported CCP event like Eve Russia is, or Eve Moscow is, or Eve San Diego is. Yeah. Well, so that's why I'm a bit touchy about the subject.
Well, generally, most Goon events, unless it's small ones, are open to the public and everyone is invited, and it's been like that for years. And the fact that this is going back to a Goon event or Goon arranged event, pretty much natural, since they don't want to close it, because that's part of the parties that they go to each year. And CCP has canceled it, so who else should take it?
They didn't cancel it. They're not going to be there to support it, to take it over and
Yeah, and they
put their
took it
effort
in the
behind it.
first place, right? Because it was one of the biggest player events. So it just makes sense that it just goes back to the roots.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity to boost player events more, right? Because many of the other player events have been kind of smallish, at least until they got picked up by CCP. And I think getting Vegas to a point where it's like the party that the players have without any other intent than socializing, I think that's actually a good thing. And I think we should have more of those.
In
We don't
Vegas,
always
dude?
have to.
Like, come
No,
on.
just Vegas is something that I'm not a fan of, but you know that. But as an event, a big player gathering, I think it's great, and I think we should have more.
Yeah. Now, look, there's another player event that's happening in New Orleans. Now that I'm interested in, because there's a city I could go to, and I'd have to fly, of course, but that's an event I'm very interested in going. So I'm looking at that one. I also want to go to FanFest this year for the first time in Iceland. I'm trying to work that out. It just depends on things. But if I have to choose between San Diego, which I'm definitely going to, or FanFest, which I want to go to, I may have enough to make it to New Orleans, but I'm not going to go back to Eve Vegas. I'm sorry. It's just like that. The experience there, I've had enough. I think the last one was if they had another Eve Vegas and it was CCP's, I probably wouldn't go to that one either. So it's not. But yeah,
I think New Orleans is a really good idea. I hope that it succeeds and get a lot of attention.
Yeah,
it's a very odd one, but yeah.
Oh, I think it's really cool, but it's gonna have so much flavor that's gonna be different. All these cities have so much flavor that's different from each other.
I'm just waiting to see the Eve logos walking down Bourbon Street. I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah. New Orleans I can get behind. That sounds like, it's that's put together by, I should know his name, and I'm sorry that I don't have it off the tip of my tongue, but he writes and gives us info, and we'll put that info up, just like we'll put up eVegas info too. We'll put up all player event info, and you're welcome to put all that stuff in a channel that we have, particularly for meetups. But Delana, who works with us here at TIS, is involved. I think ProGod tangentially is involved. But I forget the name of the guy who's putting most of the work in. Delana's putting a lot of work into it too. And they're cool, and they're nice people and proud of their city, and they want people to come see it and have a good time. And there's a lot of people who are interested in that, like Dirk McGurk. He keeps talking that one up. He's eyeballing that one.
And of course, right now is Eve London, just in case anyone forgot.
I didn't forget. It's actually on here. So let's go and look at that first. I'm all over the place this morning. Hey, it's Friday. You know what? We should call this like everything Friday. So the world tour ends this weekend with Eve London. Any chance you're going to be there, Caleb?
Oh, no. We didn't have the time. I have assignments and stuff, so sadly I couldn't go. But they already joined up, and I'm already getting some feedback from it.
How far are you from there, by the way?
20 minutes in the plane, pretty much.
It's a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah, and it's fairly cheap also. It's like $100.
I figure you take off, you cruise for about 3 minutes, and then you descend.
Pretty much.
I think if you fly from, I know that if you fly from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you hit cruising altitude, you're there for literally 5 minutes, and then you start to descend. Pretty funny. So, all right, welcome everybody. It is Friday. Let's do this again. It is today in EVE Online, November 22nd, 2019. I'm here with Caleb. That's your cue. Say something.
Yeah, that's me.
And Lich
I'm
Go.
Lich.
Yeah, hi.
I love that, Caleb. You should introduce the next one. Everybody introduces the guy behind him. All right, we're looking at eVegas right now. Sorry, we're looking at the Invasion World Tour, and that is happening this weekend. We look forward to that. They have taken their keynote and put it into a question and answer period with CCP Berger, who's the current visionary of CCP, or the executive producer. I don't know if that's the visionary spot anymore. There's a lot of information going into that Q&A for Berger, which I don't know the strategy there. Do you guys have any input on that?
Nope, sorry.
Thanks, Mecha Paladin. So I love listening to you, Matterall, unrepentantly human and owning your mistakes. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot to own.
No comment.
Yeah. All right, so let's have a look at their schedule, because I think they have it. It's going to be streamed, and World Tour, I think.
Thanks to our friends at Streamfleet for that, by the way.
Yeah. That's Raiden Harmon and Miss Moses. I guess if I hit this, it'll take me to it, because there's a schedule here. We'll look at it. We looked at it yesterday. We'll look at it again. It's definitely worth doing. They're going to have their tournament there on premise. So check that out, participate in that. And here's the actual schedule. Oops, that's timings. Oh, this is the whole world tour. London, reset signups, and ships fitting. And this is the tournament I'm looking at. Bummer. Okay, so if I look at dev blogs, tournament invasion series. Somewhere on here is the London meetup. And I'm not going to find it. Well, I hope this is good for new players, because for advanced players, well, I'm not much of an advanced player, but I can't find anything. What is EVE Online? By the way, I saw this question here. What is EVE Online? People have been trying to answer that for years. And there was this thing where I saw a video once, just once, where Hilmar was asked that question, and he summed it up in like 2 sentences, and it was perfect. It encompassed everything. It's a spaceship simulator, and it all made sense. And I've never been able to find that video since, but I've always wanted to clip that part and say, here it is in 2 sentences.
Hey, Wayback Machine. Somebody.
So Ronnie Hugo says, hell, they could have FanFest in Denmark. What do you think of that?
Well, we managed to do, I think, 14 Gangathons. So we've had a lot of events in Copenhagen. I think it was a mistake not to support that more from CCP's side, because it's such a great location for European audience, because it's so easy to fly to. And it's cheaper than London in many cases.
You mean flying there or just being there?
Both, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically have Amsterdam in the middle of the two, though, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean,
Amsterdam is
it's kind
also
of that
great.
halfway. So,
Yeah.
having EVE London and Amsterdam and Denmark. I mean, that's such a
Amsterdam is just a little bit like Vegas, to be honest.
but the 3 are so close together that
Yeah, they are.
it's a bit of a strange one.
I think one of the things that players don't know is when EVE Online first started, one of the major areas of players is basically Scandinavia, right? Or was it Denmark specifically?
Well, the first event ever was EVE London, and I think that was actually Verone. Now we can call him a Verone again.
Verone again, yeah, that's CCP, former CCP Falcon.
Yeah, he was actually the one of the main guys that set that up, and then hard upon that followed the first Gangathon ever in Copenhagen. And then, of course, we've had a lot of in Sweden and Denmark, we've had a lot of the barbecues, as far as I remember. The old Bob barbecues.
The old Bob barbecues. That's where they started, huh?
Yeah.
You went to one of those, right?
Yeah, I did. I was invited by Sword, actually, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
That was when he lived in Denmark. Now he's back in Down Under.
Right. Okay, so there's a lot of players coming from Denmark to respect your elders. They were some of the first players in EVE Online.
Yeah, it was a major popular thing in the Scandi groups because of the fact that it was an Icelandic company that had made it. So it attracted a lot of Swedes, a lot of Danes, and a lot of Norwegians. And then, of course, all the role-playing Brits came along with Usher Khan. So, good old days.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of good old days, let's look at faction war statistics. We found this on Reddit, and there was this map that popped up about faction war statistics, and each color represents a different faction. For those that don't know, a faction is basically an empire, an official empire in EVE Online. And those are in the center of the map, and you have Minmatar, Amar, Caldari, and Galente, 4 empires, each represented by a different color in the game. And so this is the faction war activity, it looks like. And I am struck by how limited the usage of the original faction war was. To me, that's fascinating. That it was, because I remember playing faction war back then, really wanting to get into it because it was a very legitimate way to get into PvP without having to do all the blood tests and all the information gathering for corporations. In other words, you could play the game by yourself, join this group. It was ready-made combat because you had enemies that were picked for you, and you just kind of played. It was always kind of busted, and it was a low-level thing, but I did not realize how the overhaul just incredibly impacted the destruction. Well, who knows what that really means, though. And here's this giant, right here in 2012, there's a giant increase to the amount of activity in faction war. Poor Minmatar, always at the bottom there. That's sad. That's why I like Noisy Gamer. He sticks up for the little guy. And if you look at Caldari and Galente, they parallel each other because that's the war that's kind of always going. Well, I think what the person wanted to point to here is that faction war has died down quite a bit, back to the levels it was.
It's just reflecting the current activity levels mostly, right? It's pretty much following exactly the same slope downwards as everything else in the game. So it's not that underrepresented, I think. I think if they looked at it on an activity basis, on general activity in the game now, I think it would be pretty much on level with what it was in the past.
Yeah. Right. I've noticed it too. I think a lot of, although our viewership is up, actually, it's actually got soft over the summer and it's kind of back up. But I think the way Eve goes, it affects all ships. It's like the tide. So if Eve is slowing down, you will see everybody kind of drift off. I'm trying to figure out the dates here. This is 2018-19. So,
it's competing with Triglavian content now, right? So
yeah. Well, I think this major downturn was basically a year ago. It was 2018 December. That was the major downturn. So it wasn't blackout or any of that kind of stuff. And I do see that it picked up around June, so I don't think blackout affected it. I don't know if blackout has anything to do with this stuff, but basically I think after 2018 where you have all these big battles going on and things, it just seemed like a lot of stuff started to slow down after that.
it seems really untouched by any of those events.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those examples of what you opened up with the whole people are bad at Eve. Well, they're specialized, right? And if you are doing faction warfare in a dedicated way, you stick to it until something massive changes, right? Of course, some will be pulled away to do other types of content, especially when it's new and novel, like the Triglavian stuff. But generally, people tend to do what they do best and what they've been doing for a long time.
I think so too. But you also have people who want to transition every once in a while to do something new.
Oh yeah, and of course they always like move up in the echelons of their player activity, which eventually leads them to the shitty job of being the boss of something, which is horrible and not a great thing at all. Even though you mentioned it as being the it's good to be king, it's really not. It's really a shitty job.
It's a lot of work, but if you're stimulated by that, you have. Where else can you have 14-year-olds telling 50-year-olds what to do?
I don't think that happens that much.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah. I'm not
I don't know.
Yeah, you had to do that, Lich. You had to.
Well, what's interesting to me though is just how different faction war was to after its overhaul. It makes me kind of sad because you can see here in the old ways, all the empires were seeing activity. And then you get to the revamp, and all of a sudden, for a long time, it's really just Galente, Caldari. Like, all right, something's not right there.
Well, we know that balance issue is there, and it's been there since forever. It's just accentuated more when it picked up in popularity. Because if you look at that graph, right, you still have to look at what indexes you are looking at. So what's the scale? And then it's really not that different. There's a few spikes of Caldari and Galente, but that's pretty much just the design of the game, right?
Difference between like less than 5,000 ships blowing up to 40,000 or 40,000 up here. That's huge.
Yeah, but if you blew up the earlier graph, I'm sure you would see fluctuations on the sides as well. But of course, there is a predominance of Kildari Galinti, but that's been in there since day one. It's just not been as noticeable in faction warfare.
Yeah, again, faction warfare probably heavily influenced by alliances like Snuff, but Snuff is now gone, so maybe there's going to be a resurgence. So moving on from faction warfare, let's move on to something I found in the forums here called the worst alliance in EVE Online. I just got a kick out of it because the very first one is Tribal Band, and I thought, oh, those poor guys. They had a bad rep back then, and they still carry it with them now. But I did like this, so let's see what else we got here. I despise Test Alliance. They are cheap, dirty, underhanded. So that guy probably is in Test, making fun of themselves.
Run.
Let's see. Oh, there's so few entries to this. So go to this thread here. I'll put it inside the show notes and also in here. And fill in who you thought the worst alliances were. I thought that was funny. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. Just be comical. That'll help. All right, so we've covered EVE London. We've talked about the worst alliances in EVE. Not many people were there. It was mainly Tribal Band and Test that were listed, but who knows? We talked about faction war stats, and one of the big stories happening now is it's a personal story, so we won't get too far into it, but one of the FCs that's been really good at this game is Elo Knight, and he's taking some time away from EVE Online because he is real life occupied until January, and that puts a really good corporation that he runs called Origin in stasis, which means it's not abandoned, it's just on hold, and he will make it back possibly in the future. The nature of him stepping away from the game was that he I think it's a lot of personal health issues that he needs to take care of, so we wish him the best with that. And you almost don't want him to come back to make sure that he gives his real life all the attention that it needs. And I'd hate to think that EVE is detrimental to any of that.
It's what Ace calls winning EVE, right?
Yeah, winning EVE. But here is a nice picture from his really good friend Headliner. So that's Elo Knight there on the left in the blue, and that's Headliner on the right. That looks like Toronto actually, but who knows where that is? Maybe it says here. No. November 22. Who knows where that is? But it's nice little picture of the both of them. They have a really strong friendship. So it's really nice to have friends that can reach out to you when you're in trouble. And so this has been a really good lesson for people to look out for each other. So I wish Elo the best, and hopefully he will get all the help he needs with health, and if he is in a condition to return to EVE, that would be great. But if not, it's been nice seeing what you do in this game, and all the luck to you.
And here's DTM joining us. Say hello.
Yo, what's going on?
Hold on, you're quiet. There.
Test 1 2. Any better?
You're fine.
Yeah, I turned you up and then you spoke up, so
Yes. Apologies about that, Matterall.
that's cool. It's all right. It worked out. All right, last stop. We're actually almost done. Wingspan, New York Times. That's nice. You know what? I was looking at this New York Times article. Not even online, but I'm just looking at it. And it's a neat little article on how families meet around the table. And what's neat about this is just inherently that families are eating together. I love seeing that. Okay. So last episode that we had on Wednesday had Sword Dragon and Pandorolica, which is long for Pando. And so they talked about what's going on in the Northern War. I still need to listen to most of it. I only heard the after show. Because I edited and put it out last night, but I only had time to listen to the 20 minutes after, where where Sort Dragon says, because I think Ron was saying, yeah, we had to. Have you noticed how quiet and nice it is inside of TIS Discord since we did a moderation like crackdown? And Sort said, yeah, I don't like it when it's done that way. I don't talk in here anymore. And Matterall's killing TIS. I don't know if he knew I would hear that, but I thought it was really funny. So then I thought, well, I haven't looked at the numbers in a long time. And so when I did look at it, we're at 2,981 members in TIS. And I believe before we did the crackdown, we were at 2,950 to 60. So we've actually gone up 20 as a net. So people are still coming and talking in stations, and even I can't kill it. But we're happy to give moderation to other people who are more able to do it than I am. So I've given up on moderating. I have fired myself, and I've let Ron do it, who's pretty good at it, along with Exxon Fang and Lux. And I think Dirk is still a moderator, even though he is taking a break. I'm missing somebody, but yeah. That was, I think, a very interesting thing. We never talked about it because we were gone at the time. But right around Eve Vegas, I had said, it's time to cheer up. There's just too much dishing on CCP, and I don't mind that you criticize CCP. You just do it in a constructive way, it's fine. But when you just say they're incompetent and going to ruin the game, I just don't want to hear that anymore. And I don't want that to poison the environment, because the environment starts to shut down, and I don't like it. But TIS has always been a place where you can talk in public about just about anything you want, as long as you respect really common basic rules. And a lot of CCPers are there, including Hilmar, and Falcon was there for a long time. But also you have CCPers like Rise and Spider, who participates a lot. You have Dopamine, and again, even like some of the new guys, like not new guys, but new player devs like Wonder Boy. So we have a lot of devs who are looking at this channel occasionally if it's productive or fun. And so people feel like they can get a message directly to Hilmar through here. So they would, of course, just crap all over CCP. And I was putting up with it in the interest of letting people blow off steam. And so about 2 weeks before Vegas, I said, we need to set a better example for players, and we need to not get too destructive against CCP, because I felt like players were being stirred up and pushed against CCP to pressure them to make certain changes. And I didn't like that narrative damaging the game, so that it was coming through TIS. And I just thought, after Vegas, I'm gonna dam that up and not let it through anymore. And really, I banned 2 people one morning and muted about 4 or 5, one including Matani. But that sent a big message. And then it got cleaned up. Like, everybody stopped being bad. It was just, I think people went other places, which is totally fine. Caleb, you totally disagreed with me on that, right?
Yes and no. I agreed with the intention, not the method. I didn't like the water cannons and rubber balls.
Well, you guys were gluing bricks to the road. I'm just kidding.
It was needed. I think post blackout and some of the comments coming out of CCP, it was expected that there would be a lot of call it anger and opinions. And I think the way it was handled on initially when you got a little bit annoyed, but the tone in TIS was still a lot better than, say, Reddit. So I don't think that it was bad. It was expected that something like this was going to come around. It was basically a venting period. I keep comparing it to a slow-mo version of the Summer of Rage, and I think it pretty much teetered out, and we're now back at focusing on the game and having actual conversations with CCP, because apparently they also listened, right? I think my takeaway from Vegas was that they actually had listened to the player base in a way that's constructive. So good on both parts in this case, I think.
I don't know if listening to the player base is really a good idea for CCP. At least they can't allow that to be the perception. I was actually again trying to write something. I start writing things and I just don't ever finish them because I realize, well, that's just my opinion, man. Like, who cares? So if it's not news, I don't actually finish the article. And I have a lot of opinions lately, which is concerning, right? Because I shouldn't care that much about it. What direction it takes, you just celebrate the chaos. That's part of the fun, is this. It's surprises. I love the idea of chaos because of surprises. Therefore, I shouldn't be trying to, I don't know, predict the way that it goes. But what I think I'm reacting to is other people trying to influence the way it goes. So I'm not trying to influence the way it goes, but I'm definitely blocking out or wanting to block out. That's my intention, to block out other people trying to control the process. Because when players control the game is over, right? It's rigged. I don't want to play a game that my opponent is controlling. Why would I? I'll play something else where the game actually is the chaos factor. The game presents me with puzzles, and I try to solve the puzzles as best I can, working against trying to outplay my opponents. But as soon as my opponents get to dictate what the puzzle looks like, game is over.
Well, we're never going to agree on that whole thing, because your point of view on the player base as needing to be hands off, I just don't agree with, because this game is not like other games. This is not a World of Warcraft game. We need the feedback from the player base. And even though 90% of them are retarded and really should shut the fuck up and definitely shouldn't be posting their wall of text armchair development stuff on Reddit, it's still important to have the dialogue with CCP, because otherwise they just step in it and make horrible mistakes.
Well, I think... Go ahead, Lich.
I mean, so I've equivalated EVE players a lot in many ways to StarCraft professionals, in the sense that when you listen to somebody who plays Terran, they're always going to say, "Oh, Protoss OP, oh, Zerg OP," for X and such reasons. Because they're pro, they're designed, their whole, they play one race, they have one viewpoint, one selective, very narrow, way of seeing the game. And the same is for the other two, right? Zerg will complain about the other two, and Protoss will complain about the other two, and so on and so forth. And I think it's actually important to listen to these players, because at a macro level, you have, especially in EVE, right? You have the wormhole players, you have the low sec players, you have the high sec players, you have the market players, you have the null sec players, you have all these groups all these players who are so specialized in their one little part of the game. And of course, they're going to scream about something, and they're going to scream about it in a super hyperbolic way. And that's completely fine, because that's their job. Now, the job of CCP is to take all that hyperbolic, really, agitated, very loud, we want this, and distill it into, okay, is there a problem here? Is there something here? Is there not? Is there something on the other side that we're missing, right? So I would say that it's completely fine for the players to have these opinions, because that's their whole point. They're supposed to be the very, very loud and very, very narrow-minded group of people that they are, because that's the whole point. And then it's the developer's side to take that.
Well, if you're going to protest, I don't like this, I want it changed like this, that's all legitimate, I think. Okay, you don't have to listen to it, but it's legitimate. Players are giving feedback. They could do it privately, they could do it publicly. That doesn't matter. It's when you say to somebody else, lose faith in CCP because they never deliver. That's the kind of stuff that we had to put our foot down on. That's when it gets destructive. Because if you dispirit people from the makers of the game and insist that your way is better, I know that feels good when you say it, but what you're doing is you're killing the machine. You're killing the frame. And that to me feels like very very destructive, and I don't think people realize that it takes a while to recover confidence. It takes a long time to recover confidence. CCP is in the process now of trying to recover confidence with certain players. That's what that whole Talos team is all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to be honest, right, do you think the Talos team would have been created if it hadn't been for the players actually voicing their opinion? Because I don't think they.
I have no idea, but I have a feeling that they always wanted to. I mean, I think we're still in chaos, right? Because you've seen changes hit the server without any warning at all. So that is the way forward. And during chaos, I think they did want to iterate very quickly. I just think they have tabled that or given that off to a team to do that specifically. And from what I understand from the lead developer, the manager of developers, I think he's not the lead developer, but he's like the guy in charge of developers. His Muppet Hunter. I have to be very careful. I don't call him Master of Puppets. From talking to him, either it was on or off camera. You can see that interview on the YouTube videos that we have on Talking in Stations.
Oh, your audio died out.
Mine did?
Yeah, you cut out, at least in here.
Oh, how's this?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine again.
Muppet Hunter, yeah. So talking to him on or off camera, I forget, but the impression I got is that the switching around of teams, like the creation of this new Talos team, is dependent on schedules. People have to finish up their work on certain teams, and then when they get free, they actually are able to transition maybe to a different team to work on a different project. All the features appear to be projects. Okay, who's going to work on this? Who's going to work on that? It maybe was always that way, but now it seems very apparent. So who knows if they had already decided they're going to have a chaos team, and that's what Talos is.
In their defense, they've been shuffling around a lot internally, right? And figuring out how to create new teams. We've seen the whole community team pretty much been changed. And of course, we have the whole thing of Berger figuring out how to move forward in the wake of Siegel. It's just a natural process. It's just that CCP in that process have been kind of silent, and it's been up to us to figure out what was going on in a way we might have felt a little bit overlooked or something along those lines, and maybe that's part of the whole emotional reaction. Also because, of course, it's a huge change to move from Siegel's era to what we have now, and it's only now starting to look as if there's actual some meaning and plans and visions in there, right? I liked Vegas. I think they had they gave us exactly what we needed to calm down.
Depends on we. A lot of people are super unsatisfied with Vegas. A lot of the guys that do more roaming and smaller PvP activities, those guys were not happy. You can see a lot of them have basically kind of left, I think. Like, not left, but they've just slowed down their activity, I think. And look at it, Snuff, I think, they didn't say it, but that's probably part of it. They've been feeling it for a while.
So maybe this is where I've got a little bit more knowledge on stuff. So inside of like the small gang atmosphere, which I do a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were disappointed with Vegas, but Talos has been really good. Like that's been something that's been really good to look at. So like for instance, the same problem you had with TIS with people talking about in the tournament server for the tournament I run, we have like a Discord server with CCP devs in it, and they end up we had the same issue you had. They were like flaming CCP devs, right? A lot of that has stopped since Talos has been introduced, and they've been making changes. So yeah. Vegas probably definitely made some people sad, but I think Talos and the decision to like make things and like do these patches and these changes like we're used to seeing in like most PvP MMOs, has been really good for that community.
Yeah. But that's not what they were asking. I mean, a lot of people, and this is a good point by Nick Bison there that talks about the people wanted a roadmap, right? Like that was all the talk before Vegas. So we want a roadmap. We want a roadmap. CCP didn't give a roadmap. They basically said, we're going to start producing stuff faster, and we're going to give you like basically a month in advance, which isn't a roadmap. But in doing so, it seemed to like really satisfy people. I couldn't figure that out. I think players don't really know what they want, but they know what they like when they get it.
Doesn't matter. You still have to dangle something in front of people when you're playing a long-term game like this. All the big game developers out there that have been running for more than a few years have actual goals and roadmaps and give you some sort of hint of what's going to happen down the line. And CCP kind of didn't have that from when Siegel left until now, where Burgers actually come up with a pretty decent plan. I like the whole thing of putting things to be in the pipe in this quarterly thing, and then they don't necessarily have to fill them out with these huge things. They can just stagger the whole thing to just live up to the expectations and actually be able to deliver, because that's what they've been afraid of, the fact that they give promises that they can't actually deliver on, right?
So Freelancer is asking what Talos is, and just to be clear, Team Talos is a development group inside of CCP that is, I think, 3 people big. It might double to 6 people if it becomes a success. Their mission is to create changes to EVE Online every 2 weeks, and they will, if they're trying that rhythm cadence first, and they might increase it or make it shorter.
It's specifically Rise's mandate.
That's Fonsui. How's it going?
Hey, yeah, sorry for jumping in there.
No,
but
it's
yeah,
good.
This is Rise's think tank. This is his personal little journey crusade to put in the things that he thinks are most appropriate, most impactful on a short, quick turnaround.
It's a bit of a rush team, right? It's things that would be in a patch if you look at the traditional big patches, but could have actually been finished earlier because they might have a really good and useful impact. So instead of kicking the bucket down the road, right, and it's just waiting and delivering when there's a big patch coming, he's basically picking up things that can be finished within a 2 weeks cadence, right? And this is really useful because it's faster than the old 1 month cadence, and it's a bit slower than the unrealistic promise of something every week. So I think this whole 2 week, maybe 3 week cadence is really, really useful. And I think it's definitely going to change the way we feel about changes in the game.
Well, like I said, it may be a perception problem, but I'm not excited about Talos. I don't think it's, I think it's very much a placating move, which really disappointed me. I wanted to see CCP wear the trousers again. I always feel better when the people who make this game are making it the way they think it'll work best. And I'll play that game and I'll pay for that game. What I don't want to see is players placated to their satisfaction, because at that point,
that's exactly what it is, right? Okay.
That's why I don't like it.
No, this is like the Blackout, right? It's just on a smaller scale. It's
exactly the opposite of Blackout.
No, because if they bring in something like, say, removal of active asset safety, if they bring in something like complete changes to the loot tables, right? Something that can be potentially done within 2 to 3 weeks, but might actually be something that has too big effects that might not be wanted, they can roll it back or iterate on it. This is exactly giving control back to CCP, so they can do things that are in that whole chaos era, right? That's exactly what is needed at Team Talos.
This is a specific reaction to Blackout. Blackout was a sweeping change, a large scale with wide-ranging impact change that did not have a rapid turnaround team behind it. And what they learned from that, they learned a number of lessons from that, and they spoke about it. But one in particular lesson that they learned was that they need to be faster on their iterations. And as Caleb said, this sort of cycle allows them to say, we'll fix it in the next patch, and that's a meaningful statement.
And because
it's trying to build back trust.
Yeah, and it's something that might not need a lot of things like an art team or a big new feature design or things like that. It's really introducing something that might be new and maybe even iterating and fixing something that's been talked about for a long time. I think Team Talos is the best thing that's ever happened in Eve.
I would like to point out two specific instances that are related to Talos that happened recently. One was how the interceptor damage buff was accidentally reverted due to a mistake that they made. They merged in a singularity build that didn't have the new, the upgraded damage, and they were able to, and they fixed that. Firstly, they recognized it within like I think 12 hours or less or something, and it was fixed on the very next patch morning, during downtime, immediately. That was one thing. Another
Well, it's
was
a copy and paste error, but yeah.
Yeah. So that was a typo, or well, not a typo, rather. There actually was a typo error on the one of the assault frigate speeds got reduced by far too much, and they fixed it and they put it back again. That was a rapid, 24-hour turnaround. That was a typo. The damage reversion was merging in the wrong, set of changes. Then there was a third instance where he decided, he forgot something. He forgot to figure out how to get enough fuel into the Venture to allow it to light the industrial Sino, and
Right.
he fixed that within the very next day. And that wasn't a typo or a merge error or anything. That was like an oversight in the actual build, and he fixed that within 24 hours, and he did it the right way, which was not changing the cargo of the ship, which was changing how much fuel that ship required to light the Sino.
Yeah.
And I think this just ties into, okay, Rise's team is not really fixing things that I am really passionate about. The point I'm trying to make is that Rise is the type of developer very similar, in my opinion, to old school Soundwave or even Unifex, right? He's got this feeling of what the game is and how it works, and he's a very experienced veteran from the game, right? So
let's not forget Kill 2, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. So when he prioritizes, he's very much aware of how it will potentially impact the game. And I think that's why it's a good thing to have someone like him doing these fast, small changes or small changes with big effects. I hope Larrikin is going to then fix all the more complicated stuff that's going to take quite a lot of months to actually tweak and develop, right?
But Larkin isn't fixing really anything. Good. He's a data guy. He does not solve problems anymore. He just presents statistics.
Yeah, and he's actually gotten very, very good at that, and that is an entire skill set that he has picked up at CCP. Like, he started out as a developer, and now he's into the data science, and he's actually really picked that ball up and run with it.
I'm telling you what he told us, right? I think Fonsway was sitting next to me when he was saying, like, these are really tough problems with the economy. It's a good thing I don't have to solve them. Somebody else has to solve them.
Yep.
No, but he will be pulling the data that's actually going to feed the development. That's pretty much my point.
It's his job to divine and interpret the data, decide what data is worth collecting, the methods of collecting that data, ensuring the data is integrity, and picking out the pieces and presenting it in a manner that gives the ability to act, and to act in a decisive manner.
Red is saying that we don't need small changes. I'm very much in disagreement with that. I think that's exactly what we need, because small changes are fundamentally just iterations. We don't need a lot of new stuff in this game. We just need the current building blocks to actually be properly designed and balanced. So it is small changes.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you. Here's some pushback. You absolutely need to draw me in with a new place to be challenged, because it seems like all the other ways that this game has to offer to be challenged are sewn up by groups, right? So in order to attract new players, I think you need somewhat new features. You need a polished environment, which is what they're doing first, but you need new features. You need new marketing campaigns. Invasions is an example of that.
Oh, sure. Then this isn't an either or. Team Talos is not all they're working on. You need all of these multi-pronged attacks, to go off simultaneously, and that is that's the power of an agile organization like they are. This is, Team Talos is brand new. They haven't cannibalized anything else. Those people technically have other jobs as well. I think that the division of labor, their scheduling, their commitment to their, to only saying what they can do and then actually doing it is improving. I had a chat with Berger at Vegas over breakfast, and he's actually no. This conversation was at Bird Bar, and he made a point of saying that he felt that their capital and their trust capital had been spent unwisely until that point before him, and he wishes to build that back up, and he's going to speak on things definitively only when he can.
Real quick, Black Friday boosts. It looks like that's what one of the things that Black Friday is going to offer for EVE Online. I have that up on screen now. It's in public for Discord, so check that out. Sorry, back to the topic. You were saying?
No, I made my point.
Okay, and I agree with you. I think that there is not necessarily. I mean, Talos is 3 people. It's not the whole company. In fact, a lot of the effort, at least a team and a half, and who knows how big those are. I think they're usually about 8 people big, or no more than that, maybe like 10. Those people are, at least a team and a half, are working on new player experiences. It's the same sort of thing, though. It's polishing off the edges so people don't get caught. And that makes for a much better gaming experience, which I think is great. There's something else that was mentioned in Vegas that wasn't, it was caught by somebody who pointed it out to me, and I thought it was a very interesting, really quick phrase that was said. And that was, we are going to be able to design for EVE Online and make sure that it can be played on a small screen as well. Something to that effect. And I just thought, oh, I see what they're doing. They're developing to make sure that the stuff that they put in can transfer over to EVE Echoes, or can be used by a browser. I forget, but basically they're designing in a way that the game they can utilize the game changes in more than one place, more than EVE Online. Makes me think maybe EVE Echoes, or definitely the portal. So if they're designing, they're going to be designing for EVE Portal, which is your handheld, which I think has a larger role to play that hasn't really been discussed much, and EVE Echoes, which is something that's being designed by a different company, but they can actually hand off code to those people. I think there's just they're definitely modernizing development. They're always working on that sort of thing.
No, I think they're trying to figure out how to roll back the modernization, right? Because they've been running with these agile and Scrum methods, which really doesn't lend itself to the type of game developer that CCP is, because they're not like other game developers, and they're not like other corporations. They need to kind of work more on the no rules, because it's like an upstart, right? An upstart needs to be very much ad hoc reacting to things, right? And when it comes to innovation, you can't really control innovation. Of course you can when you have the amount of people like in Google or something like that, and you give them the 15%. Sure, when you have 5,000 people or 10,000 people, you're going to get results from that. But when you have less than 500, you're really not, you're going to stifle yourself and stop your creative process if you have too much procedural stuff running, right? So you want to be a little bit more lax and then give the responsibility to people instead of having procedures.
Okay. So, real quick. This is an update for EVE Online. I'll have the computer read it. Let's see. This is upgrades to Minmatar ships and weapons, and it's just been announced. And I can't. Okay, so I'll have to read it. Power to the Matari fleet. Good news for fans of the Stabber fleet issue cruiser and Tempest fleet issue battleship. They are getting extra damage bonuses to their rate of fire.
Can you link it, please?
Not yet. I can't.
I believe also they updated the main page of EVE. It says Invasions Chapter 2 now, and they have a whole bunch of little extra. So it's showing off the new main ship now too. Yeah. So
I cannot link this. This was texted to me, and I cannot. There it is. I just pasted it. I'll read the second part. The Typhoon and Bellicose will be enjoying explosive velocity improvements, and the Munin will be taken down a notch after a long period of fleet domination. So Munin's nerfed, Bellicose and Typhoon buffed, Tempest fleet issue and Stabber fleet issue buffed. So
this is specifically talking about the ships, though. This hasn't mentioned the weapons yet.
Oh, it did. It's you're right. The weapons aren't here.
I'm very excited about this particular change.
Let's talk about this change, man.
So these ships and weapon systems are powerful and quite workable, but have been lackluster in the damage output for some time. And hearing that, I heard you say missile application bonuses, if I heard correctly.
Velocity,
Explo-
explosion velocity for Tech
explosion
Tuid and
velocity.
Bellicose.
Okay, yeah. So that
Yeah.
Proved
very powerful
it's
bonuses.
already applies really well. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's so it's good to hear that they're not only upgrading the ships, which hits everything the ships do, but they're also a separate and individual balance change is going to be the projectile weapons, which I think have needed some love for some time now.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
About
Hey,
the
Omeka Gold's here.
Hey, what's up?
Thanks for coming by. All right.
What do you think about the Minmatar and projectile rebalance, Omeka?
I don't know. I guess people were the Munin meta was a bit further ahead of the other ships, and so I'm glad that it's getting fixed. And I guess nobody was using autocannons, right? So let's see if they get a bit more use after the patch.
I think it's worth commenting on what was said in chat that people are expecting some sort of capital counter, but you don't want to put that in there if you have plans of actually putting a big capital counter in with the bombs, right? So if they did too much change and then brought in the bomb, then it would be one of those examples of conflating and messing up data, right?
So I'll expand a little on some of the powers of the projectile weapon rebalance. Since when you have so this specifically really matters for the smaller size, like sub battleship. This is more relevant for frigate, destroyer, cruiser, battlecruiser, the medium and small weapons. Uh, these hull sizes tend to have somewhat limited mid slots on the Minmatar ships. Obviously, Caldari ships will have more mids. And they also will end up, not all the time, but will often end up being shield tanked. So when you have limited mids and a shield tank, then you end up with no room for application support. And you end up having to pilot around your turrets instead. So if these weapons are upgraded in any way, whether it's tracking or just damage output, then that will reduce the impact of the limited mid slots plus shield tank. That eliminates the application support.
All I know is that all the market guys are going nuts over the Stabber fleet issue and Tempest fleet issue now. So
Oh yeah.
They're buying it up.
maybe we'll see. Whenever there's changes like this that are announced, there's always there's always an initial scramble, right? So
this may be so this is pure conjecture on my part since I've seen and heard nothing. However, when the faction and officer and storyline weapons were upgraded a few months ago and allowed to use Tech 2 ammo, then faction launchers became flat out better than every other launcher, better than Tech 2 in every way. Turrets, however, are a mixed bag. All the turrets end up doing less damage with the faction as opposed to Tech 2. They have other benefits, usually fitting or heat or capacitor or range of some sort. This rebalance may or may not affect the projectile turrets, the faction and officer projectile turrets. Those may actually get rebalanced and be better now. So perhaps one should buy those up. Many of them are very inexpensive because they're not very good at the moment.
I'm gonna be honest. I just can't wait to tell my fleet mates to load barrage, and not in an ironic way.
Right?
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting to see how the economy reacts to this. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, with an overall autocannon change, with an overall projectile turret, change, we could see, just a shift in the price of all Minmatar ships, really, that prefer the projectile turrets as a whole.
Well, and you talk about it too. Minmatar is really, other than Caldari and some Amar ships. It's the weapon system that's turrets that really apply, like, allows a pilot to apply their knowledge and instincts in a situation because of the selectable DPS types. Your ability to like understand what ammos do what and that kind of stuff. You really don't find that in any other weapon system other than like missile launchers. But even then, your ability, it also combines with the ability of like understanding your tracking and how you apply in that regard, and allows you to really alpha things a lot more than missiles do. So I can't wait to see actually what they end up coming out with. Though the Foon getting a, I hope it's not actually a buff to its application, but a Foon getting a buff to like missile application is legitimately sounds like, that sounds terrifying.
Well, it's explosion velocity, so
Yeah, but it's already got like a bonus to it, right? And you can already like fit cruises on a Foon and actually kill cruisers really easily and kite very well with a Foon. I've done it before.
I
It's
don't
not
actually
really that
know
far.
what the bonus is. So
Well, it's already, yeah, it's already got an application bonus. So if they're adding more application bonus to it, I'm just like low key terrified of what that could actually mean for the.
it's explosion radius, explosion
So
velocity.
it's
So
velocity. So
it's
it
not
just
sort of, it's not
Just
really
yeah,
application, but
it just well, just to be completely clear, explosion velocity and explosion radius are both application related. However, explosion radius is a better stat overall because explosion velocity stops kicking in at some point. Although, when you get too much explosion velocity and you're faster than your target, it stops being effective. But radius will always, always, always be effective if you make your explosion radius smaller compared
yeah,
to
velocity is better against faster targets, and radius is better against smaller targets in general. So
in general as a rule, yes. However, if you can manage to waste explosion velocity. It is impossible to waste explosion radius.
so I think the overall is going to be consistency is what we're going to be getting out of this buff. So
Yeah.
more consistency is good.
Yes, absolutely.
So where are the buying decisions right now? Buying up these hulls, like Stabber Fleet issue, Tempest Fleet issue, those are probably spiked already.
I mean,
Yeah.
potentially
They will spike this weekend if they haven't spiked already.
I mean,
It-
I
there's
what I
always-
did
go
was the moment I at Vegas when I heard that these ships were getting upgrades, I actually kind of bought a couple bill of stock myself immediately, like a month ago or more, because I looked at the Caldari fleet issue ship bonuses, and they all have application bonuses. So I assumed that there was a good chance that's what were going to be added. That's what was going to be done to the Minmatar ship line.
So this how always has two different ways of going about it, right? You have the initial reaction buy, which everybody goes nuts over. It increases the price because everybody's buying up these items. You get the industrial basically reaction, which then goes in and overproduces as it always does these ships, even if they're linked to LP. So the price could go up, it could stabilize, it could actually drop, because these changes aren't even live yet and the market's reacting to it. So even when these changes go live, we could see a reduction in the price of the ship overall.
yeah,
Even with
so
its
these fleet
current.
issue ships are like coming from LP source, so their price is indexed to the entire value of the LP market, particularly faction LP market. So
Yep.
it
The
could
Minmatar
stabilize
specifically,
over time.
though, which historically is very much overproduced. So we'll see where that goes. It all depends on how people want to spend their LP.
Well, I'm just glad that there's going to be more use for the outcome of Minmatar faction warfare.
Yeah.
I want to see that content to be more rewarding.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking now at people who are streaming EVE Online, and I am pleased to say that the number one streamer is not Bjorn B, although we love him, but it's actually Funzinu, who's Korean. He's got twice as much as Killer B has right now, which is really interesting. And then you have two more Korean streamers at this time, and then you have a Russian streamer and only two English streamers. Now we're talking. That's an international game.
Yeah, he's a really famous streamer. I just remember his name from somewhere before seeing him, I remembered like seeing him on Twitch recently. I remembered his name, so he must be. I think he has like I don't know what else he streams, but he's a really famous player.
Yeah, Funzino.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he might be passing through with his crowd, but it is neat to see Korean.
Well, even him
titles.
passing through with his crowd is exposure, and some of it will stick. If 10% of 494 people stick, that's a win.
And he has been playing for 3 days now. I've seen him on
So
Twitch.
he came back
More
after day
importantly.
one. That's good.
Well,
There was
that's a start, but come back to me in 3 months.
I mean, there was a
Well-
jump in overall streamers in general, so that's great. More
Oh,
attention
yeah.
toward more people, especially in a language that's now supported, is just fantastic.
Yeah, it was very like nice to see the other day. Like there were streams in 6 different languages: English, German, French, Turkish, Korean,
Turkish,
Russian.
was that you?
Yeah, no, that was another streamer, but it caught my eye as well because I'm Turkish.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. I love playing an international game with people from all over the world.
We might actually see 2K numbers outside of a CCP event, which is crazy. That doesn't normally happen. So
we're looking at 1,300 right now.
That's so getting there, one step closer.
The other night when we were streaming Eve CS was on. I think TIS was on. I think Imperium News Network was on, and I think it was someone like Marquee. I think we broke 2K that night too. It was insane. There was like 4 or 5 like plus 200 people streams though at the same.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up everything in Friday kind of deal. We talked about all kinds of things, meandered all over the place. We hung out long enough to hear some of these changes that are coming through, and you've heard some analysis about those. There's a Black Friday sale is coming up. It's not a sale, actually. It looks like it's a skill point giveaway, which is interesting. We'll see if they actually have a Plex sale too. They usually do. Anything else you guys wanted to discuss before we take off?
Have more faith in Team Talos. I think there are some exciting stuff is coming.
I
Have
have
more faith in CCP.
I have faith in CCP and Talos. I just don't like the symbolism that Talos represents. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I sure hope that we're not in another game balancing phase, because I don't find that very exciting at all.
Yeah, but as I mentioned,
they know this is a multi-pronged attack. They know that Talos isn't the only thing to do. Don't worry.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my article, actually, like they're dealing with both these MP issues and a lot of tech issues that you guys even don't know about. But let's remember, like Eve is like a 16-year-old game, so you have to update a lot of stuff. I hope that once that's done, then you can get like new Jesus features that you want. But right now, Talos is at least the best thing we have, and it's going to be that way for quite some time, I think. But
I have to say, now that you're here, I'll just say this one thing, and then you can disagree with me and tell me how I'm not thinking about it correctly. But it seemed to me like they had lowered the floor on, and I'll use the vernacular, right? Crabbing supers, closed them off pretty good, right? And then were telling us, now that we've shut down the massive money making, we have ways of now incentivizing people who risk a lot getting a lot. So they were going to they shut everything down, and they were going to build areas where you could actually make that money more legitimately with more risk. Instead, they seem to say, okay, take off that whole suppressive measure, let everybody make that money, and now we'll just start nerfing it down. Like they actually reversed their process.
I don't think we've seen the end of this. I think that there's more to come. They have said repeatedly and consistently that their intent is to make things scarier and dangerous and harder until no one wants to do it. And then when no one wants to do it, then they start turning up the rewards and not turning down the difficulty and not turning down the danger. And they're just going to make it juicier and juicier and juicier until it's juicy enough that people are doing it.
Can I
chime in?
What's that?
Can I chime in?
Hey, Ashtrathi. Yeah, sure.
Hi. Yeah, so my feeling about this is that if you want to think about it in the terms of Jesus features, right now the Jesus feature is a functional, knowledgeable, understandable and capable EVE Online client, right? That's where, again, 80% of their effort is towards the first, right now, I think they're in the 6-day phase, right? So, and then next will be 30 days. So that's the Jesus feature. This is, hey, one of our better balancing, one of our most successful game designers who came from us, who we hired because he clearly understood PvP, especially small game PvP, better than almost anyone else. We're going to let the shackles off of him and just like let him run rap shot or rough shot over everything, whatever he wants, while the majority of the people are able to work on making the game good. And then where do they go from after that is what I'm excited about. But I mean, I CCP Rise has proven himself time and time again, and the fact that he now has a team that can basically do whatever he wants to do, with the idea that he just has to keep things going and has to be able to make impactful changes. That's a hell of a mission statement.
I really appreciate the fact that you clearly not hearing what I had said before, you feel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, probably, but I just wanted to reinforce that point then.
Yeah, and to respond to Material, it goes back to my earlier point, right? The dev time. Basically, it's very scarce right now, and Talos is probably the best they can do right now. But once it unleashes, they have every intent to make space more dangerous and like get it more high risk, high reward again, instead of like very low risk, particularly in nullsec and wormholes, that the space that's supposed to be dangerous, right? So they have every intent, but that requires, if you want to do it positively, and that means like by giving new tools and incentives and so on and so forth, that requires a lot of development, dev time. That requires teams other than that, like bigger than Talos, allocated to those kind of projects, which is, for example, I think Blackout could have worked if there are some other positive stuff, like for example, perhaps giving subcaps other measures to survive compared to local, so as opposed to local. So actually they can have some sort of agency against like Sino next to them, possibly tackling them and killing them and so on and so forth. But all that requires positive development and dev time compared to negative development, which is just nerfs, right? So or taking away tools or abilities, and like local or
Mhm.
Sinos and so on and so forth. So right now, what Talos can do is like really low hanging fruits, high impact, low dev time changes, which is still better than doing nothing and just focusing on MP and tech improvements. So I think at least Talos is, and it's led by a competent person, CCP Rise, which a lot of people, and including myself, trust. So I'm hopeful, and once these hurdles, the MPE and the tech updates are covered, we have more dev time, and hopefully the space gets a bit high risk, high reward again, and more vibrant, and different things to do, and other than just capital farming.
I I would not I would not underestimate the power of his team. The things that he talked about are going to be basically first thing next year. While he was conservative in what he was promising, those red things are serious features changes. Could be big development issues involving several cycles of development of the programmers and artists and all that stuff in order to make them happen. So, but the key here is that right now Team Talos is very new, and confidence in CCP was at a very low point, and so CCP Rise is currently in a proving phase. He is showing us what they are capable of by gaining several impactful wins early on as they begin to research what they want to do for the Sino update and the structure update and those big things that you really, really want to be taken care of well. and will require development effort in order to fix.
Well, there's a lot of things in there that I won't take for granted, and that is that faith in CCP was at a very low. Like, what makes you say that?
Well, some of the things that's been said recently, and especially by
Yeah, but said by the same
the people
people
on
over and over again, right? Like
yeah,
this
but
is
still,
echo chamber.
I think one of the important things is
It
that
comes
at
from
the point
somewhere.
we're at now, right? If there is a hitting it out of the ballpark, right, before Christmas, that would completely change people's opinion of CCP, right?
I don't buy it. I'm getting more discouraged by the more capitulation they do to players. It just drives me crazy. Again, I told you that when the game feels like it's being designed by players, whether it is or isn't, that's bad optics. That is not cooperative. That is not building the game together. I do appreciate players being able to feed back information, but it feels like I know CCP is loath to be involved in the meta. They don't want to take any sides, but it feels like they're being governed by the amount of anger that can be generated by players.
But that's really not what's happening. It's at least
Does
in
it
my
look that
opinion,
way?
right?
But does it look that
It
way?
looks like Team Talos was created to be able to actually pick up things that's already on the to-do list and rush them to a point where they can actually make the impact that is needed to keep the game fresh. And I think if Talos delivers something within the next few weeks, just prior to Christmas, that is very meaningful and very impactful, that could completely change my opinion on where CCP is taking the game.
Talos
In
is
other words,
not.
you'll be
Talos is not
satisfied because you've been.
capitulation.
Hold on a second. So, in other words, you will finally be satisfied because you've been complaining quite a bit the last few months.
Well, yes and no. I know that there's bigger things that needs to be fixed, but the fact that someone with the competency of Rise is on this assignment makes me very, very happy, because this is exactly, again, it's going back to when Soundwave was fixing all those little things that people were so angry about in the Summer of Rage. It
I
feels
wasn't angry
very
about any
similar.
of those.
Well, maybe you were not, but many players were, and he basically took his entire list and basically prioritized it and said, "This is what we're going to fix." And he brought in one of the most positive patches ever, right? And I think Rise can do something like that, and he might actually do a better job than Soundwave did.
This Talos is not a capitulation. It is an apology. This is stuff that they have mismanaged their dev time for so long, for so many years, and there is such a backlog of this low-hanging fruit, of these little things that make a difference. Karker has been taking care of them slowly, and now they're expanding that concept to include larger issues that Talos can handle. And this is not, the game being designed by the players. This is righting old wrongs that have small ones that have built up over time.
I don't think what we've seen just today is an old wrong at all.
To me, it
I
feels
think
like
it's a balance pass.
they're putting the strikers on the field. Putting someone like Rise in this position is exactly what was needed. And if Kaku starts rolling some of her magic out, we're going to get some really useful things into the game.
Yeah, and I agree with this. Zero Gravity Banksy, awesome, says, that's right, Talos is an upgrade to the balance team that didn't materialize a year back. And that's how I see it. It seems like a balance team to me.
Except for they're talking about rewriting the way that wormholes work and rewriting the way that structures reinforcement work. And what they've done so far, I don't know what you want as an impact. I mean, they've killed Stuka fleets. They're about to.
Yeah, I do
did
like.
Did they announce anything about the Munin today or no?
Yeah, they nerfed it.
Right. So basically, these things that were oppressive, like that's how the meta works, right? Like
That's
so.
balance, though, right?
Right, but it is balanced in an impactful way that actually makes the game better and allows the players to interact with each other in more interesting ways.
Rapid iterative balance, as opposed to months-long processes of research and tweaking and then putting something out that's absolutely not going to make everybody happy. It is something that actually achieves achievable results, notable results, impactful results, and doesn't drain all of the dev hours.
And less things at a time, right? Instead of big patches with a lot of changes where you will not be able to get very meaningful data from it, Talos will be bringing us less changes that can be measured instantly, right?
And I again want to stress that the big feature changes come next, because while they are twiddling numbers right now, they have developers and programmers and designers that are working on the harder issues, but those are next, right? Those are the wormhole issues and the other stuff that we mentioned later. And then it gets even into crazier stuff like Titan mutaplasmids and finally getting shield slaves into the game. You know, once he's proven himself and his team is fully engaged, they're going through the research phases of the things that they want to roll out on February. They're finishing up the things that they want to roll out in January. You know what I mean? So there's a pipeline
I'll
that
tell
has to
you.
be established.
Okay, I'll tell you what's. I'll tell for people who feel the same way that I feel. I want to give you like a ray of hope that I hold on to, which is that this is iterative change that has the potential to shake up the game in a big way, which I agree with. These balance changes aren't just shuffling the board; they're actually putting new pieces on the board. Sometimes I don't know how much they will, but I don't know. We'll see. And maybe this is making the game incrementally harder for people who need the game to be harder so they can have a harder time of accomplishing things and shaking them up. And I hope it works. But
and remember, we haven't even talked about some of the things that would get you hyped about the things further down the line, right? We've not really talked much.
I've been on hold for a long time. We've been on hold for a long time. Where's stuff that's helping exploration that I haven't? Maybe I haven't missed it, right? But there's not stuff that handles the width of the game to make it feel like it's something you actually want to talk about instead of constantly stream.
But this ties into the whole thing of the rollout in Korea, the thing with Eve Echoes, the fact that Hilma is actually invested in an avatar-based platform for tablets, right? The whole thing of them saying that they might actually put Echoes on PC or other platforms, right? There's so many things that they're actually doing now that feels like a slower, less grandiose era of Incarna, right? I'm not saying that Incarna is going to happen.
I didn't like post Incarna almost at all.
Well, right, the point is that many of those things are back on the table, right? It looks like all of the things that were
that's what's got me
about
interested.
in the past is potentially going to happen. They're talking about this new trading platform outside of Eve. They are talking about putting Echoes on the tablet. It's just so many things are in the pipe that looks like the old ideas, and I'm very excited of whether or not they're going to do it.
Let me get through this analogy without interruption for a second. And here's how I see it. I see like EVE Online as a university. It has a certain amount of long halls that are dark that echo as you walk through them. There's a certain romanticism to being at a university with a lot of books and a lot of knowledge and a lot of potential. And what we also have at these universities are frats, right? Fraternities. And that's what I see a goon swarm being, or a horde, or a PL, or whoever. And these fraternities have just said, we want junk food and vending machines in the hallways. Because that's what we actually eat. Let's be realistic. And I feel like that is like contrary to the imagination of the place. Thank you for letting me get through the analogy.
So let me run with that analogy. In this case, the problem is that you want to be able to add new subject matter and new wings to the school and new, colleges to be part of the university. And I do too. But here's the problem. The front door is falling off. The windows are broken, and nobody quite ever finished the second floor. So they need to go back and do all of that stuff right now. That's what 80% of their effort is. But there is one hot shot who's proven himself that is doing his best to keep all of the fraternities and all of the other people engaged, not just satisfied, but engaged. He's not doing things. Not everything that he's doing is what they like. I mean, Titan ratting went away, for example. But they are having to fix the buildings before they can be a
I don't
good
think the
university
buildings
and
were
expand their campus.
Building's not the problem. The building's not the problem. I mean,
no, because their retention is too low right now. Like, people are quitting the game not because the game isn't well balanced. People are quitting the game not because the game isn't fun. People are quitting the game because the game is obtuse.
Talos has nothing to do with new game experience stuff.
Right, but what I'm saying is that that's what the majority, the effort that you would like to be put into these features that expand the core of the game or expand the game in new and interesting ways. That effort, that energy is currently being poured into making the game actually function for possibly the first time on a yeah.
I just don't see it that way, but I like your analogy. It's good. So did your friendly shiny over here. He said, "Such a great analogy, Ash."
Here's the way that I look at it, right? Is you have I'm sorry. The days of Wrath of the Lich King are over. The days of these big grandiose, people lining down the block for hours on end, 3 days before launch, such so they can be the first person, the first 100 to get the special edition nonsense. It's over. Okay? These games are live services. You can use whatever industry term you want to use, okay? The point is you need constant iteration every single week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every month. It doesn't matter. Games like Warframe, games like PlanetSide, games like, even WoW is doing it now. WoW has been doing it. All right. So are these small changes? Yes. Are there other things that they could be working on? Yes. Are you ever going to get a Rubicon ever again? No. Are you ever going to get a Wrath again? No. There is never going to be one of these massive expansions again. Understanding that, right? These small incremental changes, accepting that while they're not individually game shifting, altering, it's not going to kill nullsec in one go. Over time, over the course of, we have 52 weeks out of the year, cut that in half, and that's how many releases that they get per year, right? That Team Talos is going to get, right? So 20 something, right? Cool, great. And at the end of the year, guess what? Those 20 something changes that we added together that used to be one big expansion, guess what? Now it's a big expansion that spanned an entire year as opposed to, working for 5-6 months, launching out this big release, having to work on the next one, and then turning around and saying, "Oh crap, we missed something." So
Yeah, all right.
I get it, right? I get it, but I understand, like, there are certain things that you want to be working on, that you want them to be working on, but Talos isn't just tiny little micro adjustments, right? They're testing the waters with these adjustments, but later on you can see them actually do some really good things. And I think it's too early right now to tell. Just I get it. It's not the big grandiose, this is the banner that we can all get behind.
No, I don't
But
think you get it, actually, because I know I know what you're saying, but that's not what I'm saying or coming from. It's not necessarily that you, not to go back to the analogy, but I think some of the most interesting parts of EVE Online are the things that you want to talk about, the things that you want to share, and the things that you want to do in the game. It's not the reshuffling for veterans. So, okay, that's necessary because you need to keep people interested, and let's put that aside. But to pin the hopes and to pin all the attention on this one guy, Rise, whom it's not good for him either. He doesn't want all that pressure. And I sure as hell hope that he has, and I think he does, and this is why I'm still engaged. I believe CCP Rise runs his own mind, and I don't think he'll be completely influenced by nullsec, which is the shred of hope that I have there. That's why I feel like
he's not going to be easily influenced. The point is that he's got enough understanding about the game to know which knobs to turn to bring us back to a point where the players are creating more content without any rails from CCP, right? Because right now we're in the stagnation phase where the player base is not doing that much. We are kind of sitting there lurking and just waiting for something to happen. And this is exactly what Rise can do. He can poke the bear. What's that meme we saw during Blackout with the stick poking at Null going, "Do something, please." This is exactly what Rise. This is exactly what Rise can do. He can poke the bear and get players to actually play again.
Yeah, okay, well, that's up to players. I don't want to see Rise built into some god. That's too much pressure for him, and it's unrealistic. And the only hope that he can repel a lot of the players' influence and do what is a good design rather than what people want. Go ahead, Ash.
Yeah, I just want us to take a step back and think about what this year has really represented to a lot of people. because I get a bunch of people are saying stagnation and all that stuff, but the way I see it, there is a feature, a pretty big feature. Lichgrave just touched on it, that has been introduced into the game, which is the first feature in my memory that has only increased in popularity over time. They've never done that before, certainly not with PvE. That over time, more and more and more people actually start to check it out and want to be part of it and get engaged. To the point where 6 months later, I'm still fighting with people over majors, over minors, right? More and more
Let's not
people are
forget at
getting
this that
involved.
gets more and more attention as well.
I have a question, Matterall. Can you do me a favor and point to me one change that Rise has made that's been strictly for like the nullsec blocks?
Oh, I'm not looking at Rise as somebody who's strictly
Well, you
making
said
changes for
earlier
nullsec.
that the changes that is like the capitulation to the
Yeah.
nullsec blocks fraternities is something you're worried about. So I'm curious what exactly you think's been changed that's been strictly for the nullsec.
Well, everything Talos has done has affected nullsec in a pretty direct way. At least they've weighed in on it, right? I'm talking about the
Well,
perception.
yeah. I'm curious
Yeah,
if
a lot of that stuff came out of CSM.
Well, I'm curious because a lot of the changes that I'm looking at, I would see are actually better for like even small gang, and if not for small gang, make fights more likely to happen so that like people stay engaged in content. So it would you
How
could
would you
even say
say
it's
they?
better for so
Okay.
Ramjags were like strictly anti-content because all they did is they came, they scrammed you down, all the buddies warped to zero. There's no
Anti-PvP
chance.
content is what you're saying, right?
I'm saying, yeah, like it's a lot of the stuff that's been changed and stuff like that, especially in like making there more options for things to happen, is stuff that like generates more content. Whether
Like
you're in nullsec or low sec, it doesn't really matter. It's just it's there now, and those
take
options make things.
take Sino changes. It was unimaginable last year or 2 years ago that such a change would go in despite null influence, right? So that's pretty big. For example, for me, for my playstyle, for people who roam in low sec, who don't want to get blocked by a carrier or counter dropped and bait by capitals, that's a pretty big high impact change. That also affected very kind of like it's brought in new requirements for nullsec crabbing and like umbrella based mega empire playstyle, new kind of inconveniences to them, and it happened despite nullsec interests. So it's not like, I think most of the changes Talos does is that
Well,
way.
technically not Talos, but I get it's the same, comes from the same place. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I mean, that is when I said for people who agree with me, and there may be not many of them, the ray of hope is that I was going to get to was that even though these changes are needed for the game, that Rise himself can be his own man and work from the direction of the company and not necessarily giving the players what they want. What I said by it, the appearance of capitulation to players is very obvious to me. The CCP tried a thing, the players got mad, the players rioted, and CCP backed down. And that to me is disappointing.
I don't. No.
That is what it looks
no,
like.
They
doesn't
backed
it?
down. No, I don't buy it. They backed down because they did it for a reason, and when they did it, they discovered that it disproportionately impacted the people that they didn't want to impact. They wanted to hurt the people with lots of money, and maybe not hurt as much the people without the money. And what they discovered was the more such a crude change, the more somebody has as resources, the less they're impacted by it, and therefore they were only increasing the wealth disparity that they were trying to deal with. And so that's not the players complaining. That's CCP looking at the data and going, well, that didn't work, but at least we learned a whole bunch of stuff. So let's use what we've learned to make the changes that actually are needed to be made to make the game more interesting.
And
So
I would even
I don't like this narrative that Blackout ended because the players complained.
Yeah,
Blackout
I'm absolutely with
because the stats
Astarothi
told
here.
them to.
Blackout was they never went in saying this is now permanent. They went in saying we have no idea if we're going to keep this or not, or change it or not. There was a very high likelihood that it was going to be modified or removed. It was data collection. It was one phase in a very long-term data collection experiment, which is also just one part of an entire paradigm shift in terms of the design of the game.
Yeah, from our perspective, I really enjoyed Blackout, but then going to the summit, seeing the data and like how much it oppressed the subcaps, it's kind of broke my heart a bit, and I kind of saw the point of, maybe this is too much.
Right. Okay.
They never backed down because they never made the claim that this was the be all and end all, and this is how we're going to do it. They're like, we're just going to try this out and see.
Yeah, and remember, like, like subcap farming, subcap mining, subcap ratting. Those are the things that died off with Blackout more than cap ratting and roll call mining. Roll call mining a bit because they had to switch from excavators, but other than that, it affected as Aster already said, it affected the new players, like players who don't yet have, for example, even in Umbrella regions, say in Delve or Esoteria. If you're a new player, kind of like want to go out with a Raven or like Gila or maybe a Rattlesnake, and those are the kind of players who suddenly found their activity not viable anymore. And the people who had Thanatoses and Nyxes to farm, and the people who were boson farming, those are the kind of people who remain unaffected by Blackout, more or less. So CCP has seen that over time, and CSM, I think, helped CCP to see that, including me. Although I kind of really enjoyed myself being able to like hide my dread bombs and being able to, go like 6 Stratios in a single system. I multibox them, catch a rattlesnake. He never suspects because I'm cloaked. So it was a lot of fun for me, but I kind of see the point.
See what point?
And after that, every single change since then, the closest thing to a positive nullsec change has been the bushing changes. So now Stuka fleets are not viable. Every other change has been just either not touching nullsec directly, or just a straight up nerf to
Yeah,
defensibility mostly.
Mm-hmm.
To your last question, I saw the point of, maybe this is hurting players, new players, sub-capital owners, more than the people we want it to hurt. So I see the point of reverting it, and it's not off the table that they'll do something with local, but it's just it needs to be more elaborate, and that again takes dev time.
Yep. All right. Well, let's wrap up. It's been 2 hours. I like Friday being this open forum, so we'll keep doing that on Fridays. It seems relaxed, conversational. If you want to be part of this conversation, TIS Discord is the place to go. We'll continue this conversation offline afterwards there, and it'll go on usually for the rest of the day. Thanks, Olmeca, for stopping by. As always, Ashtarathi, Caleb, Dan the Man, Funsway, Lichgrave. Hi, Vapor. And we had Spod. Lux should be here to make fun of me. But we had Dazzling Spod in here with us earlier as well. I want to say thanks to everybody. Look out for the Sunday show. I will be actually engineering it for Carneros. Carneros will have Carneros and Elise will be on. And if you haven't seen it already, I should have said this before, but look out for Elise's presentation they did at eVegas. It was fantastic. It's really a must-see. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that you guys are saying good show, because I'm not always sure, because we ramble around a lot and we go back and forth. But if you guys learned something, then it's a good show. Okay, let's see who is available to be rated. This is always like a trick for me. I thought I had.
Raid the Korean.
My least favorite part of the stream. It's like, I don't. How am I going to be judged? Who am I picking to?
We got Temmie Cowboy. He's doing level 4 Galente missions. He's new player friendly. He's stream fleet. So
yeah, no, He's
We
definitely on
like
my
him. We've rated him a lot, and we'll continue to do it. But let me take a quick look. And that's who
I
I
can't see
was.
the list right now.
I would like to raid the Korean guy, but since he's a new player, it might freak him out. Or he's probably used to it from other things. All right, everybody, hang on. We're going to get you some more programming if you want to stick around. And I want to say thanks again for hanging out with us. And we'll see you on Monday. But if you want to see Talking in Stations, see that on Sunday. Huh, it's interesting. All right, raid is on. All right, guys, let's filter into public one. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.